What's up, Steelers fans? Welcome back to another episode of Round the Burgh. I'm your host, Mitchell Wolf, here with my co-host, Shane Kubis. Shane, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. Definitely kind of have some football withdrawal, but definitely looking forward to the off season. It's going to be an exciting one for the Steelers for once, honestly. So
Yeah, it's going to be a big off season of change, and honestly, we were kind of struggling to scrape together some topics because there isn't a
yeah,
ton of news. Obviously, the Super Bowl's over now. Um, it's just kind of going to be a lull period until we get to the combine. So, but we'll dive into some of the news that did happen in the most recent days. So, Steelers have hired two new positional coaches. They hired Chrisman Jackson as their wide receivers coach and Pat Meyer as the offensive line coach. And Shane, you gave a pretty hearty sigh there. So, I guess I'll just ask you, what are your thoughts on these hires?
Well, I'm cautiously optimistic just because I don't want to overreact to them, but a lot of Steelers fans are, and that's kind of where that side came from because I've seen a lot of people get very angry about probably stuff they just don't really know enough about to be
You're
upset
telling me
about.
Steelers fans are overreacting out of
Yeah,
ignorance?
yeah, I know. I didn't think I'd
Sir,
ever hear it.
in this economy? Are you kidding me?
Right?
Yeah,
Get ready for more of that this offseason.
yeah. That's what I was saying. Is like it was all the memes that people were sharing were like, "Hey, make outside hires, makes
Right.
outside hires." No, not like
Not that
that.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and that's exactly what happened. And
can't. Yeah.
I think both again people are being a little unfair because yes, the Panthers, especially their offensive line, was not good this year. But if you looked at the guys that they had, I'm not sure even like Mike Munchak or Dante Scarnecchia or the late Alex Gibbs could have gotten much out of that group, to
That
be
that's the
honest.
that's the thing, right? Is like it's recency bias, right? Because we're
Hmm.
looking at position coaches from the team that's not doing well right now, and
Hmm.
you could say like, yeah, I mean that's obviously reflects on them to some degree, but Taylor Moton is a good player,
Hmm.
honestly. Outside of that, is there anyone on that line where you're like, man, that's a solid, even a solid prospect. Maybe like Christensen is a draft pick, but like he didn't really get to do much for
Hmm.
them. Like it's just not a lot there, and it's kind of a similar situation with us, where like not a lot of established talents to pull from, not a lot of guys that you know what to expect from. So it's hard to really put a lot of that on him as far as like whether he can coach or not.
Yeah, I mean, like you said Christensen, and I had to take a second to think of who
Right?
it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. The
And then
BYU kid. Yeah. The
like Pat
tackle. Yeah.
Elflein's a multiple team cast off. Cameron Irving's
Yes.
been like a
Gosh.
backup swing tackle for
Yeah. Years
every
now.
team in the league at this
Yeah.
point.
It's insane.
So yeah, it's and then obviously I think the thing people Steelers fans wanted was they wanted to hire Mike Munchak,
Obviously, yeah.
but it seems
Which
like he's kind of just retiring. He is a little bit. He's been getting up there. He's been doing this a very long time. He's been in football for an extremely long
yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
if he wants to just retire, he's out in Colorado with his family. So I completely understand that. And
Yeah.
then Chrisman Jackson. I mean, the Panthers have had some very good wide receivers that they've developed
Yeah.
quite well, despite not having the
The quarterback
most
play. Yeah.
consistent, despite having poor quarterback play.
Yeah.
So and I think the interesting thing that people were talking about is can Chrisman Jackson kind of be a new voice in the room that could kind of reach the guys that have kind of had those mental lapses. You think about Claypool and his antics this past year. You think about Deontay Johnson, his drops. Maybe just having a different voice
Yeah.
in the meeting room, in the locker room, will kind of get these guys in a different headspace that will make them better.
I like to think so. I really think that like we have the talent, especially those two guys.
Mm-hmm.
Claypool and Johnson, like they're the building blocks of receiver. We'll see what happens with Juju.
Ray McLeod,
But yeah, of course we can't forget about Ray.
Players year one.
Yeah, exactly. But like in general, I think you're right. Like in general, getting somebody else in that room, see if we can shake things up a little bit, get a different perspective from someone else. Again, they did a good job with that with the Panthers. They just need to find somebody to throw, DJ Moore the ball. And like Robbie Anderson had a weird year. If I remember at one point he was like 292nd or some ridiculous number in like your yards per route run or something like that. It was weird, or like targets per route or whatever it was. Some weird stat where it was insane compared to what he should be at. But
Mm-hmm.
he's still. I mean, he developed pretty well. Him and Darnold they thought would work out, but of course that whole situation went downhill pretty fast.
Yeah.
But overall, I don't have a problem with the hires right now because again, you get some new guys in there, see what they can do. Hopefully, you give them some more resources to work with than the Panthers did, especially in the O line. So, I'm just going to take a cautious kind of optimism with it right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like we don't like again. Most people don't know these names, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not the worst thing because most people can't name more than five, maybe more than three position coaches in the NFL. So,
Yeah. So,
it's not that big a deal. They do. You have to give them a chance. I don't. Myers worked with the Bears and the Chargers in the past, and they both had their ups and downs at times. The Chargers had another situation where they just didn't have a lot of talent there. They drafted pretty poorly. So,
They also couldn't stay healthy to save.
Yeah, that's too. So like, again, like
yeah.
when, you can only coach up players so much,
Mm-hmm.
and there's even, I'm sure there's guys maybe like a guy like Mike Adams that, had all the talent in the world that Mike Munchak couldn't really save.
Right.
So, there's only so much some people can do. So, we got to give them at least some kind of a chance.
Right.
The other big news out of Steelers Nation over the last week was Louis Riddick being interviewed for the general manager position. And again, the Steelers just seem to be turning over every possible rock to do this. And I think some of it might also just be getting info on other teams and other processes, more of an information gathering, reconnaissance mission, if you will.
Right.
So I still think they're eventually just going to end up with Brandon Hunt, maybe Omar Khan, but I don't think this is that big of a deal. But it would, be the third, I guess, it'd be a second hiring of the Steelers where they hired a minority to a major position in the organization.
Right. So I think that it is primarily, like you said, just kind of a turning every leaf over, looking at what's going on in the league type of thing, just kind of getting an idea for the guys that are in a position to get jobs like this right now, just to see what they can look at. But I still would be surprised, like I said, if it wasn't Hunt or Khan or something. If it's not one of those two, I like I said, I'd just be surprised in general. The Dodds interview, when that happened, that was very interesting because, again, I don't know if he would have wasted his time interviewing for something he didn't think he had a shot at least, or maybe interested. So maybe there's a little bit of smoke there, but in general, I think that it's more so, like you said, just kind of reconnaissance type of thing.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Riddick is that, during his entire career, he was always on the pro side of things as opposed to the college side of things. Being a scout for the Washington football team, the Eagles, and then eventually rising up to director of pro personnel. Right. And that's what Brandon Hunt does. He's the director of pro scouting. So interesting that they're almost avoiding the college route, which, they've obviously been quite good at identifying talent there, but it's just kind of an interesting trend that they're going after
on the
that.
Pro guys,
yeah. Sure. The next thing I want to talk about, and this is something we were talking about in the pre-show, is something that's been kind of taking over Twitter in the last 72 hours, I guess. It's the quarterback Hall of Fame debate, and of course, centered around Matthew Stafford after the Rams won the Super Bowl, because Stafford, has a ton of great stats. He'll probably end up finishing top 10 in most passing categories, and now he has a Super Bowl. And for me, as we were talking about in the pre-show, I really like Pro Football Reference's Hall of Fame monitor. It kind of has a weighted average for a bunch of stats, including like first team All Pros, Pro Bowls, and Super Bowls. Essentially, I think before the Super Bowl, Stafford his number in that stat was 58, and now it's gone up to 68. So now he is ahead of two Hall of Fame quarterbacks. He was ahead of none prior, but he's ahead of Troy Aikman and Jim Kelly. And he's right below Len Dawson and a few spots behind Sonny Jurgensen, Bob Greasy, and Warren Moon. So he is below the average, but he's right in the conversation. And of course, he has probably like 4 seasons left, if I had to guess. So what are your thoughts on Matthew Stafford's Hall of Fame case?
I think a lot of it is centered around, like, one of the things you have to do with a guy like him, right, is like the numbers look great, and now he has a Super Bowl victory. He won his first playoff game and then ran the table this year after a couple tries. Detroit, miraculously. I think you have to look at his case as a guy who didn't have the things around him to succeed on a national level in terms of playoff success, in terms of having spotlight on him consistently. And I think his actual level of play was higher than most people give it credit for while he was in Detroit. And now that we get to see him on a team that actually does know what they're doing, that has good coaching, that has the players around him, Cooper Kupp, obviously the number one guy there, we see that he is capable of taking a team to and winning the Super Bowl, right? And to me, that matters a lot for his case for the next couple of years, because if he can keep this level of play up and continue to still be in the playoffs and at least be competing for championships, he might not have to win another one, but if he can continue to show that he can consistently win with the team around him, that will eventually put him in. That's kind of where I'm at with him. I don't think he is right now, but I think he ultimately will get to that point by the time he calls it quits.
Yeah, frankly, I think like if he were to retire right now, I think it would probably take a while for him to get in. It would take a while.
I think he might still, but it would take a while, yeah.
I think with 4 years, I still don't think he should be, unless he wins more Super Bowls, but assuming he just racks up more stats. I would kind of hope he's not a first ballot.
Yeah, I don't see him as a first ballot type of player.
The tweet that I saw that was interesting was from Sam Monson of PFF, who essentially
Yes.
said that basically all the quarterbacks of the 2000s to 2010s that were very good. So your Benz, Eli,
Rivers,
Stafford, Rivers, Ryan, Romo, basically none of them should get in to kind of reset the Hall of Fame in this modern era, because if you just let all these guys in for not necessarily compiling, but playing the game in a different era where you are passing for so much more, where all of those guys, maybe except Romo, are going to end up top 10 in passing yards and stuff. And despite the fact that would keep Ben out, I kind of agree with it, because as I was saying to you before, if you think about this past 2 decades of football, it was pretty much always, especially once Breeze got to New Orleans. So for the better part of 2 decades, it was Brady, Manning, and Breeze. And then after that, there was pretty much a gap. And you saw guys like Ben, Ryan, Rodgers, Stafford once in a while. Other guys kind of fluctuate in and out of those spots. But it was always those 3 up top. And I think that if you wanted to just have those 3 and keep everybody else out, I think that's a solid argument. But I think the Hall of Fame is going to be pretty liberal with letting these quarterbacks in. So I'm not sure Romo makes it in, because there's not a lot of postseason success there, on a team that has historically had a lot of postseason success, and they were on good teams. But, I think that pretty much all those quarterbacks that I mentioned, everyone else will probably get in.
Yeah, I do understand like his idea of like trying to kind of reset it for the standard of today, right? But at the same time, like, it's really hard for me to argue to keep guys who are in the top 10 at their position in terms of production out of the Hall of Fame. Like, even though it's a different era and we know that that's a lot to do with why they're in the spots where they're going to end up. To me, like, most of those guys either were good enough in their era and still were a big part of the NFL and its landscape that you can make the Hall of Fame case for them, or they're Hall of Fame level talents. Like Stafford, I think, is one of the most talented guys we've seen play as far as just arm talent, everything part of it. He is talented enough where it's like, okay, as an individual player, he has the talent to make it. Now it's just about getting enough accolades and getting enough exposure. Ryan is an interesting case because, like, I think that he's a very, very good quarterback, and that might be why I'm like, okay, his counting numbers are going to be good enough to get him in, but I don't know if he's an actual Hall of Fame talent per se. And so that's when you have to start having those debates about, is a guy very talented and maybe just doesn't have as much accolades because of who he had to deal with for most of his career, the Bradys, the Mannings of the world, or is he, again, kind of like you said, not a compiler, but just good enough to consistently start for 10, 15 years and get all those counting numbers.
Yeah, and with Ryan, he does get Super Bowl once on an MVP season.
Yes,
no
and
less.
He does have the MVP
and,
too.
Kind of gets screwed by the greatest comeback of all time, by the greatest player of all time. So, not really his fault. But Ryan is funny because, honestly, if he plays 3 more seasons, he will most likely end up 3rd all time in passing yards, which is pretty crazy to think about.
It is crazy to think about. Like, you can say, like, oh, well, they had a lot of really good passing offenses and a lot of good receivers. Like, yeah, but just playing long enough and well enough to get to the opportunity to crack that list with the guys that have come through at this point, still something that no matter what happens with him and after his career, he's going to be, I'm sure, very satisfied with his career in the NFL. Yeah. So
the other funny thing is, for that Hall of Fame metric number, so they have the average, which is right now at 109.
Right.
And it's funny because looking at those numbers, Brady and Rodgers and Breeze are all above that number, but so they're not contributing to it yet because they're not in the Hall of Fame. So once those 3 guys get in, you get Brady's 259.32 added. That average is just going to get pulled way up, and it's going to be really interesting to see who, Dan Marino, Fran Tarkenton, and Steve Young might end up below the new average, which is crazy.
Right. Like, that's the thing. I think that once this era of players do call quits and all get in, that's when you're going to see maybe a reset, right? Because now you have something to compare this next era to in a way of numbers, right? Because even though the passing game is still getting better and there's, quarterbacks are getting better, it's going to be hard to really truly blow these numbers out of the water ever, because it's just hard. You're just not going to be able to pass that much more than we already do, right? Like, unless we just get rid of running backs at some point, which whatever. But So I do think you will see kind of a reset after this crop of guys that are going to be retiring in the next 3, 4, 5 years, and then you'll see only guys that are really truly in their level or above are going to get that status at some point.
And that might be the best case for Stafford, because
Yeah.
if you think about it, like, he had so many, like, I don't think he got to 5,000 every year, but like he had so many seasons where he was right around 5,000, and
Yeah.
he only had, I think, one full season as a starter where it was before they had the new CBA and changed a lot of the passing rules that really opened up offenses.
Yeah.
So yeah, he threw 5,000 that first year, and then 4,967, 4,650, and let's see, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight seasons of over 4,000 yards passing, which
Right.
is a crazy number. So he's could be kind of that transitional quarterback from those guys, like like the Breeze, the Manning, the Brady, and Rodgers, even to an extent. He wasn't playing as much because of Favre, but those guys that kind of grew up in the old style of the game where it was still run first. And then Stafford was that transitional quarterback into the new age of guys, your Mahomeses, your Herberts, your Allens, and such and such.
Yeah, he's probably the most veteran of the guys that still are part of that like newer era of the game.
Ryan too, I guess, to some extent.
Yeah, those guys. Yeah, right in before him, like I think a year before. So
yeah,
really, I think ultimately, like you said, I think he will end up getting in. I think a lot of those guys obviously will get in. The weird thing about it, and like I've been on record of this several times, and a lot of people sometimes give me crap for it, but I think of the quarterbacks that he mentioned there, the worst one is Manning.
Oh, that's no
good
question.
amount. Like,
that's
and
no
it's just
question.
funny that I know that he's not near the bottom of the guys who are going to not make it, though. Like, he's definitely going to make it. We know
one of my best friends, shout out Anthony, who does listen to this. We've gotten in the Eli argument many times, because it's just stupid. Because
he might
aside
have
from
had
two very lucky playoff runs, he has no reason to be in the Hall of Fame.
He might have had one top 10 quarterback season, maybe. I think it was like 20, like 15 or something like some year.
I think that season where the second Super Bowl, I feel like he was actually quite good that year.
Yeah, he was a good quarterback.
I could be wrong. Like that was one of his. Yeah, 2011 he threw for just under 5,000 yards, 29 touchdowns, 16 picks, 61% completion. So like that year they made the Super Bowl. That was like one of his best seasons. So
yeah,
that's fair. But yeah, so I totally agree with that in general. So there was another kind of hot topic that hit the wire, and it of course came from NFL Network, who sneakily has almost greater hot take artists than ESPN or Fox.
They're good at it sometimes. I'll give them credit.
Yeah. And they basically asked the question, is Joe Burrow the best quarterback in the AFC? Which I don't even want to engage that, because that's obviously just not the case.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about what I've deemed the AFC fear tiers, or tiers of fear, whichever rhyme you prefer. And basically I kind of want to go through, as Steelers fans, where do the Steelers sit going into this or kind of going through this off season, and what teams do they need to pass to get to a point of being a Super Bowl contender?
Right.
So do you want to start from the bottom up or go from top down?
I think it's more fun to start from the top, just to let us, kind of get into the real meat of what we're trying to do here as far as we have to get into.
All right. So the first tier I have is Super Bowl contenders, and it's Chiefs and Bills. And I know there's only two teams there, and it does not include the AFC team that was just in the Super Bowl. But I think for all the nice things that the Bengals did, their fatal flaw was finally exposed in the Super Bowl. That it clearly needs to be fixed moving forward. Otherwise, Joe Burrow's career is going to be very short, and they will never get back there. And their road to the playoffs was a little easier, even though they had to play the 1 seed, but they didn't have to face the nuclear offenses of both the Chiefs and the Bills, or even the Chargers again. And that team, it's kind of all built on free agents. So some of them are older players. So they basically have to keep drafting super well. And for a while, they drafted very poorly. So that organization kind of is bipolar with how it drafts in cycles. So I don't have them in the top tier, which I don't think should be a hot take.
No, I think that the problem with them, right, and you kind of touched on it, a lot of things went their way this year for them to get this far. Like I did think, like as we saw them throughout the season, I was like, okay, this is a solid playoff team. They have a foundation they're building. But going to the Super Bowl this year had a lot more to do with I don't want to say luck because they got what they deserved with the way that they played, especially on defense in the playoffs. But things did, kind of sway their way in key moments a lot of the time in this playoff run. And that's what you need sometimes. I mean, not everybody is going to be able just to steamroll their way through the playoffs, but it's asking a lot for it to go that way again without significant improvements in certain parts of the team, especially obviously the offensive line. If they can make big improvements there and they can keep the defense at a similar level and maybe add to a little bit, especially in the secondary, Eli Apple, for example, needs to get out of here. But if they can add legitimate talent to this team that's ready to go right now, then they have a chance to stay within this kind of tier. But for now, without knowing what they're going to be able to do with that, I think it's definitely very fair to put them just in a tier below them.
Yeah, and the thing people I think would talk about is the consistency or lack thereof of connecting on so many deep balls that Joe Burrow did this year to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And, they basically went from one of the worst teams in the league in 2020, and obviously Burrow got hurt, to the best, with Jamar Chase. And I think they'll still be good at it, but will they continue to be historically good? Probably not. They'll probably regress to somewhere between those two, probably still in the upper end.
Yeah, I imagine.
There'll be a bit of a downgrade there just by natural regression. So my next tier is the playoff teams, and I have that as Bengals, Titans, Chargers, Ravens, Patriots. And I know that two of these teams did not make the playoffs, but Chargers got kind of a weird scenario, and they have a lot to fix on defense as well. And the Ravens were just beat decimated. Up as decimated as you could be.
Just ridiculous.
But with the way those teams are currently constructed, I feel confident about saying, all right, these teams are a threat, at least a threat to make the playoffs every year, and I feel confident about their chances making it in any given season. So any of those teams stick out, or you want to discuss further?
I think when it comes, obviously the Patriots, for as long as the Bill is there, they're going to be in this tier, right? They're just going to be, especially because Jones played really well for a rookie. I expect him to at least not get worse, and I hope for his sake and for their sake that they try to address receiver a little bit more, even though the guys they brought in gave him a boost at least compared to what they had before. But really, so there's them, the Ravens, we know plenty about them. We know they're not going anywhere right now. I've been hearing more and more about the Lamar Jackson contract extension. We all know it's going to happen. At least I hope. We all assume that's going to happen, but I do wonder what that comes out to be, the numbers on that, if that affects them in a negative way as far as building the team. But
yeah, I say this almost, it's a weird dichotomy of thought because, obviously I think Lamar Jackson is good. I want those Ravens to re-sign him, because I think he's a good quarterback and I think he gets unfairly maligned.
Yes,
for a number of reasons. But also I kind of want them just around him because he's never beaten Ben Roethlisberger. So it's we do have his number to some extent.
We do well against him, yes. And by all means, give him as big a contract as you want,
Yeah.
But really, they're obviously, as long as Harbaugh and that whole coaching staff is there, they're going to be a threat. I do think the Titans are a team. They're so interesting to me because even with missing Henry and everything else, they still managed to be, technically the
one seed.
AFC. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how it worked out in the end. And that was including major injuries of their own and everything. I just wonder how long is it going to be Tannehill, running that ship. I think it's at least going to be another year or two, if not more. But he did falter at different parts of the season, including the playoff games. So I do wonder what their ceiling is with him under center at this point.
So this might be a little inconsistent in terms of my train of thought here, but I have them there partially because of the positions and outlooks of the other teams in their division.
That's fair.
Just because they're
still clearly the best.
Just have more figured out than the rest of the
right. They have a lot. They have their stuff figured out. I will give you that. So they're at least always a good threat just to get in because of the division. I understand.
Yeah, and and again they have their identity. They have their formula. All right, this is what we're gonna do. On kind of on both sides of the ball, and if we get hurt, we can still do it. But and next year, you assume they won't be as snake bitten. And I'm not.
You assume so. Yeah.
Julio's not going to have probably not having an amazing career resurgence, but he'll probably be a lot better than he was this year.
I hope at least he plays, right?
Yeah,
he actually plays.
Exactly.
That's the main thing. But that's I think I can agree with all that. Yeah.
All right. So the next tier I have is in the hunt, and these are teams that we're kind of in it there at the end. And they might be going through some kind of big changes this offseason. So I have the Raiders, the Colts, and the Dolphins. And I don't know the
Dolphins,
Steelers
man.
here.
Dolphins, man. I don't know what to do with them. Like, I like the hire of McDaniel. I
Mm-hmm.
do. They're just, I don't know how to feel about them right now.
I'm
Just so much
I'm
is going on
I'm
with that
I'm
organization.
kind of giving them, this is honestly a bit of a rose-colored glass half full kind of
Fair.
thing. Um, because I think McDaniel will help that offense.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
again, this is in the hunt. Like they're still,
Right.
I'm not sure about them. They're still a good, that defense. If I'm not sure they can keep that whole defense together and have it play as well as it did last
Yeah.
year, but there are good players there. The offense, I can't imagine McDaniel is going to make it look worse.
Right. There's got to be positive, movement going
Yeah.
on there, at least to some extent.
Yeah. And you figure like they'll at least have something get better in the offensive line, and maybe he can help Tua with something. So I can't imagine they'll get a lot worse. And then the Colts have a great team aside from the quarterback situation, which is just a complete mess.
Yeah, that's the thing with them, right? Is like I think in the hunt's a perfect place for them though, because it's all centered around what kind of quarterback play do they get? Do they let Wentz go? Like I'm hearing that's happening. A lot of people talking about that's going to happen, which again I can't really blame them for that. But I don't know who you go to. I don't know if it's because you're not going to have a first round pick. I don't know if you go to the trade markets. One of the veterans, which I think we'll talk about here in a little bit about some of those guys, but that's what's going to determine it for them, honestly. Is like, are you a playoff team or are you just kind of floating around the edges of it like you were this year, this quarterback play?
Yeah, I think I've heard or I've seen stuff about Rodgers and Cousins maybe being candidates for them because uh, in Indianapolis, Rodgers would have better access to Pat McAfee.
This is true. Yeah.
Cousins for similar reasons. And it would honestly be kind of similar for Cousins. You have this very rushing based attack where he doesn't have to do everything. Gets to stay in a dome as well. So yeah, these teams are kind of just in a weird kind of states of transition, not necessarily fully rebuilding, and the Raiders are kind of the same way. You bring in McDaniels, and I think with McDaniels there, they are going to keep Carr, and I still think that Carr.
So.
I think Carr is pretty underrated in terms of the quarterbacks in this league. At one point, I actually thought I said to somebody, I think he's better than Russell Wilson, which I backed off a bit, but I think he's better than a lot of people give him credit for.
I agree with that for sure. Yeah, he has a lot of traits about him that I like in quarterback. So,
and if they can, maybe get that offensive line moving a little better, find some new weapons, and make sure that defense isn't absolutely awful.
Yeah.
They can kind of get back in the hunt. Although they're in a really tough division, so
they are. It's
hard
too. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. So then in the final tier, I have the rebuilding teams, and this is where the Broncos, the Steelers, the Browns, the Jets, the Texans, and the Jaguars are. I guess I didn't want to put the Browns in the hunt because I really don't think they're there, because I don't really think they're going to be consistently there with the quarterback situation as it is now. And they certainly probably won't be there even if they bring Kirk Cousins. I'm not sure that they get back in the hunt. So
it's just hard because there's so much. Like they'd have to draft unbelievably well. They'd have to be very smart with their free agency decisions just to get back to the level they were at last year, right? In terms of winning enough games to actually get in the hunt and then try to make something happen. And like it's all going to be around, because I do think ultimately, no matter what, Baker's going to be the guy there this year at least. If he plays at least closer to the way he played prior to this year, and we know a lot of it was injury and other things, then they'll at least be floating around contention as far as trying to get in that 7-6 seed. But it's just hard with the lack of talent, especially a receiver. Even if they draft somebody early, which I expect they will, doesn't mean that they're going to be ready to be 100% number one receiver or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then I have the Broncos there too, and they're I don't know if they're going to get Rodgers.
Don't think so.
But I don't know if they're gonna stick with Drew Lock or if they're gonna stick with Teddy. But that team around them is excellent.
It is, yeah.
Regardless of who is quarterback. So you have all the this is if I had to pick a team, I think this is where a Kenny Pickett or a Sam Howell could go, and they could be in the hunt.
Yeah, they could be for sure. Just stable, consistent play from the quarterback. Yeah. It doesn't have to be spectacular, because even Bridgewater, you kind of hope that's what you got from him, but he still wasn't just able to make certain plays just because it's limited.
And something I heard today was that basically the floor for Kenny Pickett is Teddy Bridgewater. So
I mean, if that's your floor, they both wear gloves.
Exactly.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just still not bad, honestly.
And then I debated putting these teams in different tiers as well. So there's the Jets, Texans, and Jaguars. Yeah. And honestly, each of them are kind of in different stages of this, because the Texans are really an animal unto
I
themselves.
don't even know
Like,
where to start with them. Yeah, it's
like
just
football Joel Osteen is just doing weird stuff down there.
no
So
clue
that's a
what's
whole
going
other
on.
thing. The Jaguars are starting over again. I really like the Doug Peterson hire. I think Trevor Lawrence is great.
Yes,
He
yeah,
did all he could and then some
he
with an
really did.
absolutely
Yeah,
awful situation
it's
this year.
it was really comical at times. Just like,
And
what is
and
going
I-
on?
I'm honestly optimistic about the Jets. Like I think they're going to be in a tough situation because they do have all three teams in the East ahead of them, especially with the Bills being a super weapon and the Patriots being the Patriots.
Yeah,
But I think Zach Wilson made some nice strides towards the end of the year. They're going to get some guys back from injury. They're going to get a good draft class, get some kind of guys that fit better on that team. So I would say this is kind of like an evolution of man situation where the and this isn't meant to be the Jaguars or the Texans are monkey, the Jaguars are Neanderthal, and then Jets are is that Cro-Magnon? I forget exactly
yeah,
which the
Crab
order
Magnum
is.
or
They're
something.
not
Yeah.
there yet. They're not fully evolved humans yet, but they're
But
getting there. They're closer.
Getting there. I think honestly, the Jets, they kind of just need to continue, like you said, getting more talent and get coaching them up and hoping that Bill just quits or something,
Yeah.
and that like Josh Allen falls down a flight of stairs and breaks his arm.
Listen, crazy.
Like,
Listen, I mean, a few seasons ago, the Texans would have been in the
right? Yeah,
playoff contenders or like playoff contenders group, and
yeah.
now they're
Then
very much not.
then things happen.
Yeah.
But in general, I think all those teams have things, especially the Jaguars and Jets. They have things to look forward to. The Texans have the only thing they have to look forward to
Hope.
is seeing what's going to happen
Yeah,
next because it's
they
a
have hope.
reality show there. I wish they would have hired McCown just because I would have been able to laugh at them more and it'd be more fun.
Oh, God.
Frankly, like that would have been so funny if they were like, "Yeah, John, you can come and be the head coach of the team."
I'm
I would
trying
have
to
been
think what
loving. I'd have loved it.
I'm trying to think. I feel like Brian Flores could have just like walked in the courtroom with like a big printed
Yes.
out of the
Picture.
tweet from Schefter
Right.
saying Texans hire Josh McCown and just been like, this is Exhibit A.
This
we
is all
rest
you
our
need.
case.
Yeah, we do you need me to do? Do you need me to do anything else?
Yeah,
I can.
he's
get
like,
some other things.
he lets his legal team go. Like, I got this. Like,
It's all right.
I can represent myself.
I have the smoking gun right here. It's fine. We're done.
I printed this out at Kinko's. I'm gonna walk it in.
Exactly.
That's all I've got, and that's
Nice.
it's slam dunk.
Right.
Summary
Oh my
judgment. No
gosh.
need to rule in the merits.
Sure.
So I have the Steelers in this rebuilding tier. And do you think that is appropriate / fair?
Here's the thing. I think the only I could just say this, and I think they would settle the case for this being correct. Is we don't know who the quarterback's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't if you don't know, like if you aren't at least like 75% sure who the quarterback is for your team going into the season, you cannot be in any other tier.
And especially if as it stands, your quarterback is Mason Rudolph.
Right. Like again, it's also you have to factor in like what the options are. But most teams, if you have options of quarterback, it means you don't really have a quarterback per se, or at least not one you're 100% comfortable with. Just from that alone, we have to be in this tier until we know what we do there. And now I think that there's avenues that we could start the season more in like in the hunt territory, but it's not guaranteed. And I definitely wouldn't argue it right now that we're not in a rebuilding tier. So,
and like you could even argue that like you could probably put I think you might be able to argue for having the Broncos in the hunt group.
Yeah, you could for sure.
And then you would basically the argument follow with that because the Broncos have a very good defense and they have a solid offense that is structured around besides the quarterback.
Right.
Whereas the Steelers have the great defense, but their offense is bad.
Yeah,
even without the quarterback.
Yeah, we're not in a spot where we can say, we're a good offense that needs a quarterback. We're an offense that needs a quarterback just so that way they can grow with their offense that's trying to figure us out. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, the Steelers are pretty near the bottom right now. This is kind of a power rankings thing.
Right. Yeah.
Ish. But I think that this is appropriate for where the Steelers are, and that's fine. I do have another game lined up. We're about at our time if you want to run through it because it could take a while. So if you want to call it, we can save this for next time to try to space out our contact. We can save it.
It's up to you. I mean, I think it'd be fun for sure. So
all right, let's run through it. All right, so I came up with a quarterback game with a few different extra rhyming things. So the first one we'll do is trade or fade / shade. I'm not sure which one you want to go with for this aspect of the game. But these are possible quarterbacks Steelers could acquire via trade based on their current relative disgruntlement with their current team or the legal system. So the first is Aaron Rodgers. So you're going to trade or fade or shade him?
I'm fading Aaron because our timelines don't line up. frankly.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing. I think that both the amount of capital that it would take to likely acquire him combined with where the team is right now, it wouldn't make sense for us or him.
Yeah.
That's about it. I mean,
I completely agree and people keep saying, "Oh, like they could do this, they could do this." And it's like, well, first of all, the money is very difficult, and also like I just don't get why he would do it because he would just get his ass kicked every week, and it's just like why would he want this?
So,
and for somebody who like gets kind of mad at receivers, like I can't imagine him having a good time with Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson.
Chase would just kill each other. Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah. Next one is Russell Wilson.
Oh man, this one's tough because like Russ does have a lot more left than him, obviously, than Rodgers, just from an age perspective, and I would like to see him with a more competent organization, especially since the Super Bowl years. The Seahawks, they've kind of had some major issues.
Yeah.
But again, like I just don't know. I don't think we could build a team around him in a decent amount of time that would make sense for him to move here. Right? Like we're not set up for him because he's used to the offensive line being bad and everything, but like it's still not. I want to see him personally. Just kind of this is more selfish than anything else. I want to see him on a team that can protect him and let him actually just do stuff that doesn't require him to be a superhero. Like that's what I kind of want to see.
Yeah, I think I'd still do it. I would trade for him.
I would be willing to do it. Like I said, because his timelines line up more, but it's because,
like you said, he doesn't really care about the offensive line apparently. So,
well, hopefully he can live with it. But
yeah, exactly. So, I'm in on it if they really. I mean, I can't imagine Ciara would be thrilled about coming to Pittsburgh. Doesn't really seem like her type of city.
No, probably not.
Considering she was like, oh, like we need to go to like New York or Las Vegas or Chicago, and then Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's not probably for her, but
no. The next one is Kyler Murray.
Yes. Listen, I've been seeing a lot of this, right, with the whole Kyler Murray situation. I don't know how much of it means anything. Probably very little of it means anything, realistically. But as soon as that came out, and certain Steelers Twitter people were talking about it, all the things like, I wouldn't trade a first-round pick for Kyler Murray. Or I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what are we talking about here? Are you kidding? Of course I'm going to trade for Kyler Murray if he's available, especially if he's available for any sort of like realistic price at all. Like 100%. What are you talking about? Like, so yes, 100% for the trade there.
Yeah, he's a midget, but I'd do it.
Right. Like, I mean, I don't care. Like he's just ridiculous. Like the talent level is off the charts. Like I understand there's certain things with him that like you have to work through and like build the team around him correctly, but like there's that you can't give up or you can't not take a shot on a talent like that. You can't. Yeah, there's no way.
And I mean, I feel like if anybody's going to kind of make you grow up and get with the program, it's Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, there will be no problems.
Which I'm not sure that's what Murray wants. But again, like I can't imagine him being in a more coddled situation than he is in Arizona.
That decision, like I understand, like from face value, bring in Kingsbury because of the relationship there. But the only way that team is ever going to take the next step is if he's not the coach. I'm just going to be like, that's just, I've said that for a while, honestly. They need to make a change there because they just need to bring in someone who's a true, like, an actual NFL head coach, not just a guy who worked with the quarterback that you have.
Yeah. So the last one I have for trade or fade is Desean Watson. And the reason I bring this up is because he was in the news recently with a report from Jeremy Fowler who said that the Bucs and Vikings are among the teams that I believe are interested in trading for him.
I'm fading him for, the same reason everyone else is going to say they're fading him. Like, again, the guy's talented, but I don't want to deal with anything that he's dealing with. So.
Yep, same. If they do it, I would renounce my fandom.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
All right. The next game is similar. Sign or decline.
I like this one a lot.
This is a little more. This is going to be interesting. So the first is Jimmy Garoppolo.
Decline. Listen.
Sign.
I understand. Like Jimmy's not that bad. Okay. I shit on Jimmy Garoppolo a lot. I'm gonna point to my friends, to anyone who brings him up. I do. He's not a bad quarterback. I just don't think it's that much more fun or that much more interesting to have him on the team than any of the other guys that might be there.
Okay, that's fair.
I think he would cost more ultimately than some of the guys you can just go get.
Yeah, you're right.
Whether it's capital for the trade, obviously aspect of it, money. Like I just don't think it's not enough of an upgrade where I'm going to think that this team can be competitive, but it's also going to be in this middle ground that I don't want to be in with him. I don't think it's worth it personally.
Yeah. See, that's, I think it is sign. I think that part of the reason I think it's almost predictive because I feel like they will think, he can keep us in that,
right.
Keep us in the playoff race, which is like,
I'd rather honestly either. I don't necessarily think we'll ever bottom out, obviously,
No.
because the defense. But like, I'd rather be closer to that and
Yeah.
not have to pay a quarterback or give up draft capital than be closer to the middle and have to do that personally. So,
All right. The next one is Jameis Winston.
Jameis.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hate his start to the season.
No,
Honestly, he wasn't
not
bad
at
at all. Like, I think for the right price, if you just need somebody to play quarterback that's not Mason Rudolph, I'm okay with it. Honestly, if it's like a 1 year, 2 year thing, like just to have somebody there, I think that'd be fine.
Honestly, if you think about it, Mason and Jameis are pretty similar.
Yeah, at least Jameis has a lot more talent.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he at least has like the ability to be good. He just isn't usually.
Who's
like,
the better
Malik Willis.
runner, Mason or Jameis?
Jameis is the more creative runner.
Okay, sure, creative.
He's more. They're both not good, but like at least Winston.
Hey,
will
Mason had some nice runs.
I know
year.
that's the funny part, right? Like he looked better. He's not immobile at least, which is nice. But like Winston does like the weird like turn like runs around in circles, runs. He has a lot of that like just almost. It almost looks like not nearly as good, but like Tarkenton the way he would run away from people.
Yeah.
Like you watch highlights from him, he just does weird stuff that makes no sense, and I think the defenses just can't figure out where he's going, and that's why
because he doesn't know where he's going.
No, yeah,
so
he doesn't
if he doesn't know, then nobody will know.
Yeah, so I think it'd be fun. Yeah.
All right, next one is Marcus Mariota.
I actually named him in an article I did a while back of possible like cheap free agent signings the Steelers can make to kind of just have a better player there. Kind of in the same way, Winston. Like I think if it's like a 1 or 2 year like cheap deal, just to have somebody there that at least has experience and can play a little bit.
Yeah,
I'd fine with it. I think that it'd be better than giving up capital, like I said, for somebody. So
yeah, that's a sign for me as well. You know, I'm very concerned about his ability to stay healthy because even when they run him on Wildcat, I feel like he gets hurt every time. So I just don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, his injury history hurts. But.
Yeah, but maybe. And the last one is Mitchell Trubisky.
I would have said decline before you and I had a discussion about it because again, I don't like Trubisky, but I do think he is given more hate than he deserves at this point. He still falls in this tier, right? Like why give him a 1 or 2 year prove it deal, see if he does something great, awesome. If he doesn't, nobody cares. Like again, same tier of those guys as far as at least it's going to give you more upside at the position than Mason Rudolph. Like
this is kind of the other side of your Jimmy Garoppolo argument is like, what if like sign Trubisky for a very low deal, and if he goes like Super Saiyan as much as Mitchell Trubisky can go Super Saiyan, you probably make the playoffs.
Yeah, and
if
like,
he
at least it's fun,
does dumb Mitch things, then you have a top 10 pick and you get a good quarterback. So
and I think again, at least with him, you don't have to trade for him and then pay him more money than you have to. So like that would be I think a good way to do it because realistically, how good could he be? Probably not that great. Is he going to be more fun than some of the guys? Yeah, for sure. If you let him do it,
people forget that like Trubisky is like chaotically fun.
He is like it's really fun to watch him play. It's just sometimes it's bad, but it's
exactly
it's
chaotically fun.
Yeah, like that. I still remember there's one play. I want to say it was against either the Patriots or maybe I forget the other team. It could have been, but he had this wacky run where he ran like the length of the field twice back and forth, and then somehow scooted around the edge at the end and scored with it.
Yeah,
I forget what it was. His Pro Bowl season, I know that, but I don't know what the team was. But just stuff like that, he can do that type of thing, which is fun.
Yeah.
So
all right. So the last one we have is draft or shaft, and we'll go with the top 5 guys.
Right.
I think that's 5 guys is probably all we need here. The first one is the one that everybody's been talking about with regards to Steelers is Malik Willis.
If he fell to 20, at least he's the highest upside guy. I wouldn't hate it. I still feel like, and this is kind of going to make this game not that much fun, but I don't think any of them should be drafted by us this year, particularly just because, we're not in that position to take a guy like the guys that are here. But if he fell to 20, I think it'd be good value, at least for a high upside quarterback prospect. So,
yeah, I think we can shorten this one up. But so I'll still say shaft. Like,
yeah, it's
I think the road to get where people think he is going to be is very long and winding.
Yeah, it's a winding.
And a lot of things need to go right. And one of them especially is learning behind a solid veteran, which Steelers do not have right now.
We don't. Yeah, we'd have to bring in somebody to be his actual mentor. That's not
which at that point I would rather just draft somebody else that can play and contribute
Right.
immediately, but also in the long term, and
Right.
have them help whoever we're signing, and then go get a quarterback later, because I just think it's just a lot to invest for a guy like where. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan. I'll say the one that I would be more interested in drafting is Sam Howell.
Yeah, you've talked
And
about that. Yeah.
I know I'm in the minority there, but I just really like his blend of skills and toughness. I think on a better team, he'd be able to start and play quite well. I think on this team, it would be a bit of a struggle. But of these guys, he would be the one. Of Malik Willis, Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett, Carson Strong, and Matt Corral, I would probably want to draft Sam Howell for the Steelers specifically at their current draft position.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still shaft just
Fair.
because, again, I think that overall, I don't like any of the quarterbacks enough to commit a first-round pick to them, and for a team that just isn't really in that position to want to do that.
Yeah.
But I do see the appeal with him more, and I'm trying to get some of my friends on that train a little bit as far as like at least like kind of looking at him more. But I still think that it would still just not be the right fit personally. So
you just got to go back and watch some of the 2020 film.
Yeah, that's a big thing
around
him.
Yeah,
that's part of it for sure.
Yeah, the other guys, I'm not. I mean, again, the Pickett
thing is it's Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
It's he's all right. I don't think that he's gonna be overdrafted. Obviously, I think all these guys pretty much are going to be overdrafted to a certain extent, unless some of them fall out of the first round. But again, his ceiling is maybe like Derek Carr-esque at the absolute best, which is good. I mean, that's a good quarterback. We mentioned him before, but like, but it's probably not like
even Derek Carr has taken a while to get where he is.
Right, it is exactly,
and he's still not a top. He's around. He's like might be a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, on his best, like as a best case scenario, he's in that tier, which is good. Like it's not like that's not worth the first round pick, but
Derek Carr wasn't even the first round pick.
Exactly, it wasn't. I mean, probably should have been, but that's the
in a very weird quarterback class.
It was a really weird. But I think that all these guys, like Kenny mentioned, like they all have their strengths and weaknesses, but none of them have the full skill set that makes me go, man, we can't not draft that guy. Yeah. Like it just doesn't exist this year.
I think Strong will be off their board for medical and character reasons, and the same will be for Corral will be size and character reasons.
Yeah, those two I don't see as remotely options for them.
I'm not sure if you follow Carter Donick on Twitter, but he works for Draft Network, and he does all like the humorous quarterback comparison. So I think he called Matt Corral punk rock Zach Wilson.
Yes, that's what. Yeah, like without the off-platform brilliance.
Exactly.
Basically, yeah. I mean, you don't want to not have that part of your game if you're being compared to Wilson. So.
Yeah, and I watched Corral recently. I was just very confused.
Yeah, I did. I've watched mostly, I think 5 or 6 of his games from the past 2 years. He's a good RPO quarterback, I guess.
I'll say this, and this is like, it's like obviously, but I think if he went to the CFL, he'd be the greatest player in league history.
Yeah,
by a wide, like he would break
CFL in him.
every record by exponential amounts. Like he would just shatter everything.
Forget Doug Flutie, forget.
Exactly.
It's he again. I don't know if it's going to translate at all.
Yeah,
to the NFL. I mean, it's odd. You're going to have to run a very weird thing with him, but we'll see who does that. But yeah, I'd say pretty much for the draft in general, I'm still going to be on the camp of let's just not do that.
Absolutely. All right, that'll do it for us this week. We'll be back next week. Not sure what we're going to talk about. Hopefully, kind of hope something doesn't happen so we don't have to, something bad. Because if something happens, it will probably be something bad.
Probably.
Hopefully the front all stays quiet on the Western Pennsylvania front. But in the meantime, Shayne, let the people know they can find you and your work.
Find me at Shayne Kubas on Twitter. And if stuff does start to happen more, we have more stuff coming out from Steelers content in general. You can follow at Steelers ATB. We'll be putting some stuff out there too, as well, most likely. And you'll also just look out for any written stuff from me that I might throw out in the timeline.
Yep, you can follow me at Mitchell T. Wolf, WOLFE on Twitter. Been getting into some scouting reports I've been posting recently. So again, find those at aroundtheblock.com, or I think it's atvnetwork.com. And make sure you're following Around the Block on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, all those platforms. And thank you for listening. We hope to have you back next time.